So I wanted to avoid making duplicate content that Raleigh has already covered, but alright, this one's for you guys. So the year is 1995, it's June 11th, and we're at the 21st Sands Regency Open at the Sands Regency Hotel Casino in Reno, Nevada. After starting with a field of 70 players, it's narrowed down to Efren Reyes and Earl Strickland. Earl is coming from the one-loss side, and Efren Reyes is undefeated, but the entire tournament will be determined on one final race to 13. Earl wins the lag but breaks dry, and Reyes runs the rest of the rack, putting him up 1-0. In Game 2, Reyes breaks, gets a shot on the 1, and has an easy run, putting him up 2-0. Game 3, Reyes breaks, but the cue ball flies off the table, giving Earl ball in hand. There's a pack in the middle of the table, but Earl plays superb position and makes getting out of the rack look easy. The two trade racks back and forth until Game 9, with the score tied at 4-4. Earl breaks and makes the wing ball, but he gets a bit unfortunate with the one ball hitting the nipple of the side pocket, leaving him with no shot. In today's games, this would be a fairly easy jump shot, but Earl was very opposed to jump cues whenever they first came to the market, and I'm not even sure if jump cues had hit the market in 1995. And so ensues one of the best safety battles of the match. Earl tries thinning the one ball and sending it off the bottom rail and behind the 1 and 9. While he doesn't get the safety, and it was pretty close to leaving Reyes a shot on the 1, it turns out to be a decent containing shot. Reyes, without any high probability offensive options, jacks up to play a stop shot bank, and the one ball goes off of the rail and then hits on the far side of the 7, sending it up table and potentially behind the 9. But the 1 runs into the 6 and leaves an easy hit for Earl, but it's still a containing shot. Earl ends up being left with an easy opportunity to play safe behind the 2 ball, but ideally he would have had a bit more angle so that he could hit the 1 ball a bit firmer to send it further down table and make it much harder to hit. Instead, he has to cut the 1 to get it to avoid hitting the 2 ball and ends up having to slow roll the cue ball, which doesn't leave much space between the cue ball and the 1, making it a pretty easy kick shot to control. The idea that I had as soon as I looked at the shot, and that the announcers talked about, is that Reyes could draw off of the 1 ball, sending the cue ball behind the 4 and 9 and the 1 ball up table. And I think he wanted to try to do that, but he misjudged the speed and underdrew the cue ball. Either way, Strickland comes back to the table with a full view of the 1 ball. Here he wants to bank the 1 back towards where the cue ball is, and send the cue ball down to the right of the 3 and off the 2 rails behind the 5 ball. Even if he doesn't get behind the 5, it won't offer a shot on the 1, but he hits the 1 ball a little too full, allowing the rolling follow on the cue ball to take a little quicker than he wanted it to, and he runs into the side of the 3 ball, which then knocks the 1 ball off its course, which now leaves Efren a chance to get out of the rack. But there's a lot of green on this shot, and he has to bridge over the 3 while maintaining a bit of bottom right for shape on the 2. And he ends up missing the 1 ball, but he ends up hiding it behind the 4. Earl can't see the 1 ball, but he is able to spin the cue ball off of the side rail to pocket it, and he ends up with a full view of the 2. From here, he has 2 offensive options. He could play the combo, but with so much distance, it's a fairly low percentage shot, even for someone of Earl's caliber. The other option is to back cut it to the upper left-hand corner, but it's not a risk Earl is willing to take, and instead he thinly cuts the 2 into the rail and rolls the cue ball behind the 6 and 5. Reyes can't see the 2 ball, but there isn't much space between the rail and the 2, making this another easy kick shot to judge, and Efren goes for it. Reyes nails the 2 and pockets it, and is left with a shot on the 3 and plays really nice position to get on the 4, and then makes short work of the rest of the rack, putting him up 5-4. In Game 14, Reyes makes another great shot. Earl breaks dry and leaves Reyes with a shot on the 1 ball, but the cue ball will be running away from the 2. But Efren comes up with a brilliantly executed shot, pocketing the 1 and sending the cue ball into the 6 to redirect it back down towards the 2 ball. He then gets out of the rack, and the score is now tied at 7-7. After Reyes being up 12-10, Earl takes the next 2 racks and ties the match at 12-12. It's Game 25, the score's tied at 12-12, and the entire tournament is going to be determined by this 1 rack, and Earl has the break. Earl breaks, making the 2 ball in the corner pocket, but the only shot on the 1 is a very thin long cut. But those aren't the only problems in this rack. The 5 is hidden by the 9 ball unless you can get the cue ball to hold in this area. But with where the 4 is, that becomes a pretty easy task. The other problem in this rack is the 7 and 8. The 8 ball is blocking the pocket that you would typically want to shoot the 7 in, so you have to play on the short side of the 7 for the side or corner pocket. So the question is, how do you get from the 6 to the short side of the 7 ball? You'd normally want to play 2 rails back down for the 7, but the 9 ball's in the way. So you can either just get a slide angle and draw back, get an angle on the other side and draw with bottom left, or you can get a really thin hit and shoot a shot similar to this Carlo Viato shot I made on a video. Earl isn't keen on risking this entire tournament on this thin cut on the 1 and decides to play safe, but once again, he overshoots his goal and Reyes is left with a long cut on the 1 ball. He makes it with no problem, but he pushes the 9 ball over into the cluster of the 4, 5, and 6. He now has to find a way to break up the pack, but still get shape on the 5, and he has 1 shot to get in line to do it. He plays a really nice finesse shot to come over and get perfect shape to break out the 9 ball, but he ends up overdrawing the cue ball when he breaks out the 5. He breaks the 9 out, but the 6 is still in the way of the 5. Ideally, he would have only drawn back a little bit to get shape on the 5, the way I demonstrate here. And now this is where the famous sequence of events begins. Reyes is forced to play it safe, and he plays a really good one. Except he gets unfortunate and ends up knocking the 8 ball in. And now the safe that he served up to Earl is his to deal with. But we all know what happens next. I try to hit the rail where Efren hit his shot and just try to feel the amount of English that he puts on it, but I come up short of even hitting the 5 ball. I try it again, but this time I don't even get past the 7 ball. So for my 3rd attempt, I load up with a lot more left and end up hitting lower on the 2nd rail than Efren did. The good news is that the correct shot is somewhere in between those 2 extremes. On attempt 5, I put a little bit more left than my 1st attempt, and I'm getting a bit closer. A bit more left than attempt 5, and I end up hitting the bottom rail just before the 5 ball. I'm slowly dialing in the speed and English of the shot, and on attempt 7, I make contact with the 5 ball. On my 8th attempt, I slightly overshoot the 5, but on attempt 9, I'm really dialing in the shot to at least make contact with the 5, and I get a nice firm hit on the 5 ball. I try to do a slight adjustment to hit a bit more to the left side of the 5, but I overcompensate and end up missing it entirely. On attempt 11, I go back to just hitting it with the same feel that I had before, and I make another solid hit on the 5. On attempt 12, I make contact with the 5 again, but on the wrong side of the 5. I barely miss the 5 on attempts 13 and 14, but on attempt 15, I get the 5 ball traveling towards the corner pocket for the first time. But I hit the short rail before contact with the 5, so it doesn't really count. On attempt 16, I get another firm hit on the 5, and then I miss it entirely on attempt 17. On attempt 18, I have a breakthrough and finally get close to making the shot. If I hit it just a little bit thicker, it would have been in the pocket. And just when it feels like I have the shot down, I hit way lower than I did on any other attempt and end up cutting the 7 into the corner. But on attempt 20, I regather myself and the 5 ball almost drops. It's literally sitting on the edge of the pocket. And then on attempt 21, I hit the 7 ball again. But on attempt 22, I get down, the cue ball heads towards the 5, and it drops with good shape on the 6. I must have hit the shot a bit weaker than Efren did because the cue ball ends up a few diamonds short of where he ended up, but it's still an easy out from here. I play the 6 with straight top, and then I play the 7 with straight top to get on the 9. And that's it, I'm out.